everyone. This is the third event, panel event that we've hosted over at Women in Tech Republic. So it's nice to see some new and old faces. Just as a quick introduction for those who might be new and first time on one of these events. So I'm Alicia, I'm one of the co-founders of Women in Tech Republic alongside Daisy and Serena. Women in Tech Republic is a Third Republic employee-led effort, which we created to try and challenge the gender imbalance within technology. So our mission is really to connect, inspire, and develop the careers of female technologists with a vision to try and push our community members to be change agents in the world of tech. So, really, we just want to work towards having a real diverse and inclusive environment in the technology space. So, yeah, as I said, it's our third panel event. Tonight's themed around actions we can take in diversity and inclusion. We'll kick off tonight with our four speakers, Ben, Hirsa, Birgit and Anna, and after that we'll jump into the two breakout rooms. So in the breakout rooms, as Daisy mentioned, we've got the topic creating a space in which women can succeed, and then we've got your experience being hired as women in tech. I'll kick things off with introducing you to Ben, who was going to talk a bit about herself and what the topic means to her.
Thank you very much, Elsa. So hi, everyone. It's great to be here and share a virtual stage with some amazing panelists so that we can all talk about what are the actions that we can all take as individuals to create and cultivate a truly inclusive and diverse workspace. So I think we can all agree, right, that we all want to live and work in a society which is fair, equitable, and inclusive. I think the merits of diversity and inclusion is well documented and well discussed. But I think sometimes there can be some frustration around what we as individuals can do to make a meaningful difference within the workspace, right? So I know that I definitely felt that sense of, being helpless and kind of like shrugging my shoulders and feeling that, hey, you know what? As an individual, I can control my action and then I can be accountable for it. But then what can I truly do to influence that change within the workplace? So look, as a junior, I was wrong to think that. And I realized that actually, no matter where we are and where we sit within the organization, all of us have a role to play to make a difference. And actually, small but meaningful actions can make a big difference in the workplace. So I think before we dive into what are the actions themselves, let me just introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Ben, and I have worked in financial technology for the last 15 years, with most of them being at Goldman's and at JP Morgan. And I grew up in India, and I grew up in a really rural place called Nagaland. And I moved to London about 13 years ago to build my career as a software engineer and then as a technology leader. I also recently quit my job to hopefully take a well-deserved break before I move on to the next phase of my career. So with that introduction, let's dive into the topic. And I think I just want to talk about two key areas of focus for my part. One is that diversity and inclusion should be integral to every business process and decision within an organization. So be it around hiring or pay or people development or management. It cannot be a topic that is just brought up and discussed during Diversity Week and in isolation, right? It needs to be a part of how we practice and live within and work within the organization. So I guess what can we do? I think if you are a senior leader or a hiring manager, you can actually do a lot. So review your hiring practices, Look at different avenues, like where you can actually hire more diverse candidate. One of the biggest thing is define your job spec so that it's actually focuses on what are the skills that are required to do the job, rather than, what are the characteristics and the personalities that you see around you. The other thing is make pay and promotion fair and, transparent, because pay people for the role, not for what they ask for or what they expect. And I think this is probably one of the biggest areas that I see a lot of inequality, especially among minority groups, and that it always saddens me when I see people leave like organizations because they felt that it was unfair, or they were not being paid well or paid fairly, I think, which is the right word. And then, I think they move on and to some other career. If you are not in a leadership position, then hold your managers and your leaders to account. Ask them like what are they doing to actually hire a diverse candidate. Ask them to have better transparency around pay, like even if you're paid fairly, like make sure that those are discussions that you actually have, even if you might necessarily not benefit from it because, you have a fair salary or a fair promotion or opportunities that's been given. I think the second point that I would like to mention is around mentoring. So be a mentor and then find a mentor for yourself too. The biggest influence in my career has been the mentors that I've had in my career. And then also the biggest impact that I've made has been by being a mentor myself. I've been very, very fortunate that I met really amazing people who believed in me, who gave me a chance, supported my career. If you are in this call or in this room, then you definitely have a level of privilege and influence that you can use to inspire, to coach, and be a role model to someone. It doesn't need you to be in a leadership role for you to make a difference and then to be a mentor. So your mentee can be a student, like can be an intern or a junior engineer, or perhaps even someone who is in a non-technical role but wants to move to technology and doesn't have the sort of understanding or doesn't know how to navigate that career change. So you can be the difference to them, as some of my mentors have been to me. With that thought, I'm going to pass you on to Anna.
Thank you very much. Really, really great to hear your insights and really sort of build on that. We are definitely on the same page. I love hearing, our values sort of align quite nicely. As a way of introduction, so my name is Anna. I am, experienced talent acquisition and people operations business partner. I've worked internally and externally with, for some years now, with the specific sort of lens on diversity and inclusion. Quite often, I'm sort of I would say that both my personal and my professional aim here is really to create that more inclusive and safe world of work. And really develop that sense of belonging. That has always been very close to my heart, even when I was a little girl. Not that I knew that it was called diversity and inclusion, and certainly it wasn't called that in Finnish. But that has sort of always been kind of a driving force in me. So very often in my day job at the Clear company, I do these sort of culture transformation sessions. I look after a global inclusion standard. And then, of course, I've also got my second hat, which is the D&I director at Women in Tech Global Movement. And what I really advocate on is intersectional actions on ED&I. So, of course, as I mentioned, it's always been close to my heart as sort of since I was a little girl. And there were always these unwritten rules and expectations and gender sort of norms that I didn't quite fit in. I didn't really know what to do. I was always sort of challenging those. And then, of course, when I got into work life, there was all kind of other sort of models and labels that was sort of, again, given to me. And then again, that sort of started, whether it was bullying, whether it was discrimination, talking over or being harassed, all of those things are, of course, something I don't want anybody else to ever again go through. But again, it's sort of just giving me more of a fire to do something about this injustice. Yes, it's great to have this awareness that diversity and inclusion is great, but actually there's a proper change that is needed in this society. So I've always wanted to be part of that change. That links to the point that not only because of my gender, I have so many other characteristics that are also sort of hidden characteristics that I do have. So I feel that sort of sense of belonging to many underrepresented groups. But yes, so that links into my sort of first thought that I always say when I get asked, well, where do I get started? What does diversity and inclusion mean for us as an organization? So very fundamental thought first is the true inclusion is all about the intersectional approach. That's really there to create those authentic environments where people can actually fully, authentically be themselves at work. That's the most important thing for anything that you're going to do with D&I. And of course, then we link that to happiness, more innovation, more effectiveness, all that sort of things where we want to be in a better place. But then also to kind of Ben's point, we all have our inclusive leadership shadow, regardless of your background, regardless of your seniority, regardless of your lived experiences. Everybody should embody these inclusive behaviors, and everyone should act as these sort of champions for diversity. If you look at your friendship group, if you look at your family, your extended family, take these sort of actions into that mindset as well, because it really basically is just about changing mindsets and changing attitudes. So your actions on D&I, they might have a starting point. There's hundreds of things that you will do when it comes to D&I, but it's never going to be any separate change program. There isn't a sort of endpoint to D&I. Your culture, if we're just talking about on an organizational level, it's always going to be changing. It's always going to be adapting. Whatever was okay 2 years ago, 5 years ago to say or do or act like, it might not be the norm and actually might be very exclusive these days. So take that sort of curiosity with you as well to this change management and this culture transformation. And I guess just my final point that let's also remember that diversity and inclusion absolutely doesn't just sit within your talent management. It's also sits how you just generally treat others, how you influence your suppliers, how you treat your customers, and how inclusive, how accessible are actually your products and your services as well. So that's a couple of thoughts from me. And over to Bridget, I think.
Thank you, Anna. It was very, very well said. So hi, I'm Birgit. I am being in the first group, which has something to do with hiring diverse. And this is something that I really believe in. I would like to share some numbers that actually intrigued me when I was researching on the internet on this topic. It's a 2018 LinkedIn report, which is about gender diversity in hiring. First of all, it's divided in similarities and then also in differences. The similarities to men and women when they are searching for jobs, they are both very similar. There are very similar numbers of people searching for a job, and also they are viewing these jobs as well. So this is basically what LinkedIn is tracking, and they are also the same amount of people or of gender is actually also researching a company when they're searching for jobs. But now to the differences, and this is really intriguing me. One of the differences that is really intriguing me is that women are more selective, and we know it all, right? We need to be like 100% perfect. We need to fit perfectly to a job ad. And this is something where I think we need to look at ourselves a little bit and say, yeah, okay, I need to have this skill and this skill, but whatever, I just try it. And also, what also intrigues me is that 26% of women, less of 26% of women are actually asking for referrals when they want to get into a specific company. Women, however, what is also intriguing me, when they are reading a job ad, they are more interested into like how much money they can make in their future position, whereas men are really interested in their long-term career opportunities. And what I also find interesting is recruiter bias. And later we also come into different biases as well from different persons, is recruiters are actually 13% less likely to click on a woman's profile. And this is where LinkedIn is actually suggesting to turn off the profile pictures of women. So let me introduce myself a little bit. I was actually starting as a graphic designer, and I already faced some biases there, but I even faced more biases when I went into computer science, because this is a male-dominated world. What I also found very intriguing is that most of the leadership positions are filled with men. And this is something that I'm also focusing on, because when we are also following data such as the LinkedIn report, it actually says that when women actually apply, they are more likely to be hired than a man. So why are we searching for men? Or why are we actually hiring and so many times more for leadership positions than actually women? So we need to ask ourselves what's going on there. Especially in Corona times, I have myself applied so many times that I have gathered a lot of experience as an interviewee, but at the same time, I was still employed, and I have gathered at the same time so many experience interviewing people as well. And I found myself also being radically biased, not against women, but actually against men. And I also need to ask myself, hey, what's going on here? Is this really me? Or is this woman really fitting into the job? So I have to weigh my own emotions and my own thoughts about this person against the data that I have found on the internet. At the same time, I also try to convince companies, like as Ben and Anna do, to do more about diversity. So it really starts with talent acquisition and really trying to get some numbers like data-driven talent acquisition or hiring. How many men do we hire and how many women are actually applying? So we should also take this into consideration. And then how to keep this woman as well. How can we actually really reach out to them? What would women actually really appreciate when we want to hire them? Would they really like to have a food basket, or would they rather prefer a childcare support from the company? So this is what I have to say about this.
Hi everyone, I'm Hirsa. Nice to meet you all. So a little bit about me. I'm a software engineer by education. I've been in software industry all my career. So last 15 years, I've been in software. I'm now the Chief Operating Officer of Symbox. Symbox is a technology company. We create and sell our complex SaaS product to enterprises. I look after product development, professional services, and customer success functions. When I started at Symbox, Symbox was a five-man company in London. It was a startup. That's about 10 years ago. I was the only woman, and in fact, I was the only woman for many years. And I, since being the CEO, I've been very actively trying to create processes that foster unbiased screening and hiring, and generally educating the leadership team, the senior and mid managers around inclusivity, but more precisely, how to make our employees feel that sense of belonging, mainly through psychological safety, but there is a lot of work that I think the leadership, in my opinion, should be doing in every organization to overcome those systematic barriers that we have for women but also I think it's beyond gender, for different minorities to essentially progress and to get where they deserve to be. So that's been my focus really. Outside of work, I work with schools as well, from year 5 to year 8, just around gender balance in computing and technology. And all in all, I have a passion to make sure that we have that gender balance in tech. We have that different point of view and perspective of women at the decision-making table, and we can problem solve better together. I think both genders combined.
Thanks, Hirsa, and thanks, ladies, for the introductions. Definitely some really interesting points mentioned, and yeah, I look forward to discussing further in the breakout rooms. Maybe if we just introduce some of the topics that were discussed across the rooms, and then maybe we can have more of a whole group discussion. I think there's definitely more to say in our room. I mean, it was really interesting. We touched on quite a lot of topics, to be honest, ranging from like being a woman in the interview process, facing biases, maybe feeling like you're a diversity high or a diversity checklist of, interview a woman to interview, just to interview, trying to overcome bias, questions women can ask in like the interview process, and changing interview processes, or what we can do internally to make sure that it's not bias. Loads of really interesting discussion, talking about networking right at the end. I don't know if anyone else wants to touch on anything else that was discussed in the room, but again, I mean, good to hear what happened in the other room as well. I mean, with regards to our room, obviously the whole discussion was around kind of creating this space for success, and a few things that have been brought up is all around kind of, the key of giving a space when people have a voice. A few kind of things as well with regard to like to make authentic change, look at personal change as well, and understanding biases, emotional intelligence, what Anna touched on, kind of creating a space for success where you can start with why, and having a lot of conversations as well. I think communication is really key when it comes to the organization you're working for and the space that you're working in. I think as well a lot of it comes down to and I know one of the ladies touched on, is kind of having enough kind of confidence as well in yourself, and not kind of always feeling like you have to prove yourself, you're good enough at what you do, and to be working around people that can value that as well, and not just kind of looking at you but as you're a woman, or hiring you because you're a woman, making sure you're in a place where you're being hired for your skills, and for what you're capable of, not just because of your gender, or just to tick a box, kind of what Elizabeth mentioned.
Just one point around which Deborah brought up, which it's very, I really felt that was that about, I think I talked about a little bit about mentors, but also about managers, that probably a great manager, I think her words were, a great manager is a gift to cherish, and then something that really helps and propel your career, right? So I think having that is, I think that is super important, as well as really is like probably the closest person or the most important person from a career perspective in terms of how it progressed, and then how well you feel like you belong, is like the team, but then like the manager as an individual plays a part in that. So I think that is something that is really important for future managers, as well as people who are managers today, to make sure that they are the one leading the charge on this.
I feel like there is a lot of responsibility on my fellow colleagues working in people and culture departments to really push on these topics. And because this is a systematic issue, I think that we need to have a systematic approach to it, and not just, I think someone mentioned maybe in breakout room or even earlier about investors pushing for a diverse talent and having more females. I think we are the one who really are held responsible for really pushing for inclusive and diverse environment for all employees. And there are a bunch of initiatives we can do, and initiatives are great, but I don't think there is like a plug and play solution to any of these issues. I think this is a continuous process, and that everyone interested in this and really caring has to take approach. And by that I mean also employees. I think they should be very vocal about how they feel at work, and I think you should bother your HRs with all these topics really hard. Because that actually helps us a lot. In our company, we have a spontaneous group for diversity inclusion. They form a committee, and I was very happy to see that, because it means that we did something. At least we empowered them to be very vocal about things they do. So yeah, I think we as an HRs, we need to really listen to our people and let them challenge us.
Really, really interesting. I think it is so important to keep vocal, not to ever feel like you're kind of speaking too much around problems or, you know, pestering anyone, because I think that's kind of the real time when you see change, right? So yeah, it's really, really good night.
I'd just like to sort of finish this off with, you know, we've talked about our differences, but what if we sort of flip it, and what if we were actually interested to find out what we actually have in common? If we just look at the change in face of society and, you know, stats of how any protected characteristics, any underrepresented groups, we actually represent something like 70% of the workforce anyway. So let's just try to sort of find rather what we have in common.
Great. It's a great way to finish it. I think it's good to come together on that, and to become the majority rather than the minority. I really appreciate all your time, and great thanks to the speakers for taking the time out today. Really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great evening.